Imagine waking up in a cell. The walls are gray concrete. The air smells of industrial cleaner and rust. You look down at your hands, but they don't feel like your hands. You look at the wall, and there is a calendar. The date is wrong. The last thing you remember is walking down a high school hallway in 1975. But the calendar says it is 1977. 2 years of your life have simply vanished. A guard bangs on the bars. He calls you a rapist. Your lawyer calls you insane. You scream that you are innocent. You scream that you don't know why you are here. And you are telling the truth. You didn't do it. But the 23 other people living inside your body, they know exactly what happened. This is not a ghost story. It is the story of the most fractured mind in legal history. It is the story of William Stanley Milligan, the man who was a crowd. In October of 1977, a shadow fell over Ohio State University. In the span of just 2 weeks, 3 female university students were abducted. The modus operandi was terrifyingly consistent. The attacker would kidnap the women at gunpoint, drive them to remote locations near the campus, and sexually assault them. The police were under immense pressure to catch the predator. They got lucky fast. One of the victims identified a mugshot from a police database. The suspect was a 22-year-old drifter named Billy Milligan. He had a record for robbery. His fingerprints matched the evidence found on one of the victim's cars. To the district attorney, this was a slam dunk. They had the man, they had the prints, they had the witness. They prepared to lock Billy Milligan away for life. But as soon as the detectives brought him into the interrogation room, the slam dunk case began to fall apart. The detectives noticed something bizarre. At first, Billy sat slumped in his chair, eyes darting around the room, acting like a terrified, weeping teenager. He seemed to have no idea where he was. Then, in the blink of an eye, the atmosphere in the room changed. The suspect sat up straight. His facial muscles hardened. He crossed his legs with an air of aristocratic arrogance. When he spoke, the terrified American teenager was gone. In his place was a man with a deep baritone voice and a refined, upper-class British accent. He looked at the officers with disdain. He demanded a specific brand of cigarettes. He corrected their grammar. He spoke of physics and chemistry with the knowledge of a professor. When the lead detective slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "Billy, tell us the truth," the man looked up calmly and said, "Billy has fallen asleep. I am Arthur." The police thought he was faking it. It's the oldest trick in the book, plead insanity to avoid prison. But his public defender, Judy Stevenson, saw something that terrified her. Over the course of their meetings, she didn't just meet a British intellectual. She met a violent Yugoslavian man who could break handcuffs. She met a smooth-talking con artist. She met a crying 3-year-old girl. She called in the experts. And during a psychiatric evaluation, a doctor finally asked the question that would unlock the mystery, and the answer was not one name. It was an army. Who are you? The medical diagnosis was dissociative identity disorder, DID, formerly known as multiple personality disorder. But Billy's case was unique. His mind wasn't just broken, it was organized. Under deep hypnosis, the personalities revealed the structure of their world. They described a dark room. In the center of this room, there was a bright, burning spotlight. Whoever stood in the spot held the consciousness. They controlled the body. They saw through the eyes and heard through the ears. The others, the alters, waited in the shadows. They slept, or played cards, or watched, but they could not interact with the outside world until they stepped into the light. When one person stepped out and another stepped in, the body experienced lost time. For the core personality, Billy, waking up was like blinking and finding himself in a different city, months later. He thought he was dying. He had tried to kill himself multiple times. Because Billy was suicidal, the other personalities, the protectors, had put him to sleep. They kept Billy in the shadows to keep the body alive. Let's meet the primary operators of this human machine. Initially, doctors found 10. Eventually, they would find 24. Arthur was the administrator, a sophisticated Englishman. He managed the spot. He decided who came out and when. He was the logic, was the protector, a Yugoslavian communist. He was the keeper of hate. He possessed incredible strength, expertise in karate, and knowledge of munitions. When the body was in danger, Arthur stepped down, and Reagan took the spot. Reagan could punch through walls. He could tear a toilet fixture out of the concrete. Was the con man, the keeper of relations. He was the only one who smoked. He was charming and manipulative, the one who talked to the outside world. Was the keeper of pain, a frightened 14-year-old boy. Whenever the body was beaten or abused, the others would push Danny into the spot. Danny existed only to suffer, so the others didn't have to Reagan Batistavana challenge Danny. It seemed like a perfect survival system. A brain, a muscle, a face, and a scapegoat. But there was a massive hole in the defense. Arthur and Reagan claimed they were innocent of the rapes. Reagan had a strict moral code. He protected women and children. So, who committed the crimes? Buried deep in the subconscious, the doctors found the undesirables, personalities that Arthur had banned from the spotlight. 22. Among them was Adalana. Adalana was a 19-year-old lesbian poet. She was shy, lonely, and starved for affection. She cleaned the house and cooked for the others during the lost time. But she was desperate for love. It was Adalana who took the spotlight during the assaults. In her dissociated mind, she wasn't raping these women, she was seeking comfort. She wanted to be held, but because she inhabited a man's body, her confused attempt at intimacy became a violent felony. This is why the victims said the attacker cried. It wasn't a monster. It was a lonely girl, weeping for a connection she could never have. The question that haunts us is, why? Why does a human mind shatter into 24 pieces? It is not a random disease. It is a creative solution to an unsolvable problem. It is almost always born from severe, repetitive, inescapable childhood trauma. For Billy, the architect of his hell was his stepfather, Chalmer Milligan. According to testimony, Chalmer was a sadist. From the time Billy was a small child, the abuse was constant. It wasn't just physical beatings, it was sexual torture and psychological terror. Chalmer would take Billy to a farm and threaten to bury him alive. He would hang Billy by his fingers. He would simulate executions. For a child, this reality is too much to process. You cannot fight back. You cannot run away. So, the mind does the only thing it can, it leaves. When the pain started, Billy closed his eyes and wished he was someone else. And his brain granted the wish. The child thinks. He thinks. This isn't happening to me, it's happening to Danny that I am not hearing this screaming, Sean is hearing it. He split his soul to survive the unsurvivable. By the time he was an adult, the original Billy was just a fragment, lost in a crowd of his own making. In 1978, the state of Ohio versus William Milligan began. It was the first time in U.S. history that a defendant used multiple personality disorder as an insanity defense. The courtroom was a circus. The prosecution called him a liar. The public called him a monster. But the expert witnesses, psychiatrists from across the country, testified to the impossible facts. They showed that his different personalities had different IQ scores, different brainwave patterns, even different physical reflexes. The judge made a historic ruling, not guilty by reason of insanity. Billy was sent to the Athens Mental Health Center. This should have been the end of the story. But in many ways, it was the beginning of the tragedy. At Athens, under the care of Dr. David Call, Billy began to heal. The therapy wasn't about killing the personalities. It was about integration, getting them to know each other, to share the memories. In this safe environment, a new personality emerged. They called him the teacher. The teacher was the fusion of all 23 personalities. He had Arthur's intelligence, Reagan's strength, Alan's charm, and Adelana's sensitivity. He was the only one who remembered everything. For a brief moment, Billy Milligan was whole. He was brilliant. He was an artist. He collaborated with author Daniel Keyes to write the famous biography, The Minds of Billy Milligan. It looked like a miracle. But the world outside the hospital was not so kind. The media painted Billy as a pampered criminal who tricked the system. Politicians, up for re-election, used Billy as a talking point. They claimed he was getting easy treatment. Pressure mounted. The court ordered Billy to be transferred from the safe haven of Athens to the maximum security Lima State Hospital for the criminally insane. Lima was a dungeon. It was known for brutality. The doctors there didn't believe in dig. They called Billy a manipulator. They isolated him. They refused to let him paint. Under the stress and the fear, the teacher disintegrated. The mind cannot hold together when it feels unsafe. The fusion broke. The inner world descended into civil war. Arthur and Reagan locked the others away. Billy fell back into the abyss. It would take another decade of legal battles before he was finally released. Billy Milligan spent the rest of his life trying to find peace. He tried to run a film company. He tried to live normally, but the cracks were always there. He died of cancer in a nursing home in 2014, at the age of 59. On his deathbed, we do not know who closed his eyes. Was it the Englishman? The protector? The thief? or the little boy who just wanted to go home. Billy's story is a tragedy, but it is also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. His mind broke to save his life. He reminds us that the self is fragile. So, the next time you look in the mirror, take a moment to appreciate the face looking back. Be thankful that you are you, because for Billy Milligan, I was the hardest word in the world to say.